Donald Trump just fired Michael Langley, the head of the United States African Command. I'm sure many of you that keep up with African geopolitics will be celebrating this right now. But before you celebrate, there's a few realities that we're going to have to consider. In this video, I'm going to detail the exact personnel change that sees Michael Langley no longer in charge of Africa Command, and I'm going to speculate on what this means for the continent of Africa and its relationship with the United States. If you're interested in that, stay tuned. So for those of you that don't know, my name is TJ. I am Nigerian and British mixed, and on this channel, we discuss African geopolitics. I've been following the Michael Langley story for the past few months. I think it's fair to say that Michael Langley has been a disaster in terms of helping a positive perception in the minds of the average African when it comes to the United States. The truth is, he's done the absolute opposite. So of course, even Michael Langley himself has explained just how important narratives are. And right now, the narrative is very negative in general when it comes to the position of the United States in Africa and its meddling, right? And I think most people would call that neo-colonialism, all to get the wonderful, rich resources that Africa provides at the cheapest price, even when that cost is paid in blood. So as usual, I've put together as much information as I can around the story, and we're gonna start with what has actually occurred. Let's get into it. Fox News reports, Trump nominates seasoned military leaders to head vital global commands. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced Wednesday that President Donald Trump had nominated two high-ranking military officials to lead the U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, and U.S. African Command, Africom. Trump nominated Navy Vice Admiral Charles B. Cooper II to be promoted to Admiral and be assigned as commander of CENTCOM at MacDill Air Force Base in Florida. The president also nominated Air Force Lieutenant General Dagvin R. M. Anderson to be promoted to general and assigned as commander of AFRICOM in Stuttgart, Germany. And ABC News reports, Trump names new commanders to lead troops in Middle East, Africa. President Donald Trump has nominated a 3-star Navy admiral who played a key role in the United States bombing campaign against the Houthis to lead U.S. Central Command, a top post in charge of U.S. military operations across 21 countries in the Middle East and North Africa. If confirmed by the Senate, Vice Admiral Brad Cooper will receive a 4th star and replace General Michael Eric Kurilla, who is expected to retire this summer. Trump also has nominated Air Force Lieutenant General Dagvin R. M. Anderson to lead U.S. Africa Command. He is currently serving on the Joint Chiefs of Staff and would replace General Michael Langley. So, the official story is that President Trump is just shuffling his team, putting new leaders in place. But you and I both know that in the world of geopolitics, nothing is ever that simple. A general in charge of an entire continent isn't just replaced like a light bulb. So, the real question isn't what happened. We know that. The real question is why. Why now? And I believe the answer comes down to two things. Number one, General Langley became a PR disaster. And number two, the old way of doing things is no longer working in Africa. Let's be honest. Langley became a liability. He was too loud, too clumsy, and he made the fatal mistake of saying exactly what Africom was thinking out in the open. Think back to that now famous hearing with Congressman Matt Gaetz, when Gaetz pushed him on whether the US shares core values with the US-trained coup leader in Guinea. Langley stumbled. He couldn't give a straight no.
This is Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, and this is a photo of him. Did we train and equip him in Guinea?
By name, I cannot identify that.
Well, that guy in the middle with the big red hat, Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, that's him with a bunch of U.S. service members outside of our embassy. And just months after this photo was taken in 2021, he led a coup in Guinea and threw out the leader.
In that moment, he accidentally told the truth, that Africom's idea of values is flexible, especially when it comes to controlling a country. The final blow came from what he said about Captain Ibrahim Traoré when he accused Captain Traoré of using his country's gold to protect the junta regime. Protests broke out across the globe because it was clear that Langley wasn't using Traoré to make a point about terrorism resources like he later claimed. Instead, he was speaking for angry foreign interests that had just lost their Burkina Faso cash cow. It was seen for what it was: a direct neo-colonial attack on a leader who is wildly popular and a symbol of positive progress for Africa. A general's job in a place like Africa is to be effective, but not obvious. Langley turned on a giant spotlight and pointed it right at America's real agenda. He became the face of American meddling. He was too noisy. He simply had to go. But getting rid of a loud general is only half the story. The bigger reason he was replaced is that the entire American strategy in Africa is being forced to change. And that should make us very, very suspicious. The old strategy of the US in Africa was simple: be the hammer, send in a man of straight lines, a Marine that makes condescending statements with the knowledge that the people won't care as they are so enamored by America's flash and might. But Africa is now more switched on, and that tired strategy is failing. African youth are saying, we will decide our own future. And you can't use a hammer on people who are no longer afraid of it. In fact, the hammer just makes them more united against you. So what do you do when the hammer stops working? Well, you switch out the hammer for a scalpel. A scalpel is quiet, it's precise. It does its work without anyone even knowing they've been cut until it's too late. Replacing Langley is not about America giving up on controlling Africa. It's about them getting smarter. It's about them switching from a loud hammer to a silent scalpel. And to understand what that means, we need to look very closely at the man they chose to be the new surgeon. So, if General Langley was the loud hammer, who is the new guy, Lieutenant General Dagvin Anderson? His background tells us everything we need to know about America's new strategy. General Langley was a Marine. Marines are a blunt force. They are trained to take the beach, to be seen, to be a powerful presence. General Anderson is different. He is a career Air Force Special Operations officer. Let's be very clear about what that means. Special Operations, or SOCOM, is the part of the military that works in the shadows. They are the Green Berets, the Navy SEALs, the Secret Squirrels. Their job is not to fight big, open wars. Their job is to be ghosts. They specialize in things like covert operations, missions that are secret and deniable, training foreign proxies, not just training armies, but training small elite units inside other countries to do their bidding for them. Clear psychological warfare, spreading information and propaganda to change how people think. Unconventional warfare, helping destabilize a government or supporting rebel groups without leaving any American fingerprints. Do you see the difference? They replaced a man whose job was to be a visible threat with a man whose entire career is based on being an invisible one. Now, this is where I want to offer my own perspective, my own speculation. And I want to be clear, I could be wrong about this, but I think it's important to look at the possibilities. To me, it seems like this could be a massive strategic pivot. It's almost as if they are admitting that the old way of being a bully on the world stage is creating too many enemies in Africa. So what if they've decided to bring in an expert in quiet, hidden influence? Someone who is an expert in meddling, but without leaving a trace. This leads us to a really important question. Is America stopping its meddling, or is it just getting better at hiding it? When I look at Dagvin Anderson's resume, it leads me to believe it could very well be the second one. It makes me wonder if the goal is to have their hands all over Africa. But when we look, all we are supposed to see is a ghost. Think back to the things we've talked about before on this channel. The strange assassination plots, the possibility of foreign funding for rebel groups, the sudden rise of terrorism, right when it serves a Western agenda. These are all things that fit right into the Special Operations playbook. It's worth noting they haven't appointed a diplomat to this role. You could argue they've appointed someone who is a master of the dark arts of geopolitics. And one has to wonder if his job will be to take the plans Langley was already working on and make them quieter and perhaps even more effective. Now let's try to connect this new appointment to something we uncovered before, the pincer movement. And let's ask ourselves how a ghost leader, like General Anderson, might change how it works. Remember the map we looked at? We tracked General Langley's movements, and they didn't seem random. He was systematically visiting and signing military agreements with nearly every single country that borders the AES nations. He went to Algeria, Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast. You could say he was building a military wall, a strategic encirclement, around the countries that dared to claim their sovereignty. Langley's job, it seemed, was to build the cage publicly and loudly. So what could the new general's job be? In my view, if Langley's job was to build the cage, then it's possible General Anderson's job is to quietly lock the door. He probably won't be flying around signing big public agreements like Langley. That's too noisy. Instead, what if he uses his special operations skills to activate that cage from the shadows? So what might this pincer movement 2.0 look like? Again, I'm just speculating, but it could involve things like this. Instead of big training exercises, maybe he will oversee small, secret special forces teams working with the armies of those surrounding countries. Perhaps he could manage the flow of secret intelligence to those countries, guiding them on where to look and who to target. It's possible he could use Africom's vast resources to quietly fund and supply proxy forces on the borders of the AES, all while maintaining total deniability. If this were the strategy, the goal could be the same: to weaponize terrorism, to use the cage Langley built to trap extremist groups inside the AES, forcing them to cause chaos there. Then Africom could turn to the world and say, "See, we told you, these new sovereign leaders like Captain Traoré can't provide security. Africa needs our help." If this is true, it's a sick strategy. It's like they create the fire and then try to sell you the fire extinguisher. And let's reconsider the timeline around the assassination attempt on Captain Traoré. First, Langley publicly condemns him. Then, a plot is discovered, with the masterminds allegedly in Ivory Coast. Then, Langley himself shows up in Ivory Coast for military exercises. You could say that was clumsy, that it was obvious, that it left fingerprints. One could argue a special operations expert like Anderson wouldn't make that same mistake. It's possible that under his leadership, any meddling would be much harder to prove. The support for destabilization could flow through so many different channels that it might be nearly impossible to trace it back to the US. It's a thought, isn't it? Langley built the cage, and maybe Anderson's job is to make sure that when the chaos starts, America's hands look clean. Okay? So we're imagining a new, quieter general in charge of military pressure. But now we have to talk about the latest move, because this is where the potential new strategy could get really clever and really dangerous. Just recently, the United States sent a top diplomat, an envoy named Molly Fee, to Burkina Faso for talks. On the surface, this looks like a good thing. It looks like America is choosing diplomacy over threats, and the media will probably report it as America extending an olive branch. But I think we have to be a little more cynical. We have to ask the question, why would America suddenly want to talk right after appointing a secret warfare expert to run Africom? I don't believe the answer is simple, but to me, this looks a lot like a classic good cop, bad cop routine played on a continental scale. Let's just imagine for a moment how this could work. On one hand, you have the bad cop. In this theory, that would be the new Africom, led by the ghost, General Anderson. The bad cop's job in this scenario would be to continue the pincer movement 2.0, to quietly support groups on the borders, to keep the threat of terrorism and destabilization alive, to make life for the AES nations as difficult as possible. The bad cop would be the stick. He never says a word, but his military pressure is felt every single day. On the other hand, you have the good cop. This would be the State Department, represented by the envoy, Molly Fee. The good cop's job would be to show up in Ouagadougou with a smile, to talk about partnership and shared goals. The good cop is the carrot. She might be there to offer a way out of the chaos that the bad cop is creating. Do you see the potential trap here? If this theory is correct, then the unspoken message to Captain Traoré and the leaders of the AES might be something like this. You can work with our diplomat, the good cop. You can slowly come back under American influence, allow our companies back in, and distance yourself from partners like Russia. If you do that, maybe the pressure from the bad cop will magically disappear. But if you refuse our partnership, the unspoken threat could continue. Then you will have to deal with the chaos on your borders. And we can't be responsible for what happens then. This entire potential strategy would be impossible with a loudmouth like General Langley in charge. You can't play good cop, bad cop if the bad cop is on TV and podcasts every week, clumsily and unintentionally communicating that he's the bad guy. It's possible they needed to replace Langley with a silent professional like Anderson to make the military threat feel invisible but constant. They might have needed a bad cop who would just do his job and keep his mouth shut. From this perspective, the change in leadership might have been a critical piece of the puzzle to allow a new, more manipulative strategy to work. If my speculation is anywhere close to the truth, then this would be a cynical, brilliant, and deeply dishonest game. They could be trying to pressure a sovereign nation into submission by surrounding them with military threats, while simultaneously sending a diplomat to offer a peaceful way out, a way that leads right back to neo-colonial control. This could be the new face of American policy in Africa. Maybe it's not a hammer anymore. Maybe it's a quiet threat from one hand and a fake smile from the other. And I believe it's our job to see both hands clearly and to call out what it could be, a trap. We must remain vigilant and continue to support the leaders who are brave enough to stand up to both the hammer and the scalpel.
So what do you guys think out there? I would love to know. I'm sure you have lots of comments. Do we have cause for concern? Are my ideas and predictions around this change something similar to yours or totally different? Please put your thoughts in the comments. If you have nothing to say, would it be too much for me to invite you to write the words, "Langley's finally gone," in the comment section? It's a bit of fun. It lets me know that you've watched the video to the end, you like what I'm doing, and you want me to keep going. Thanks so much for supporting the channel and watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.